And thank you so much for dedicating some of your evening time to have a discussion with me. I really do appreciate it. And I do really appreciate your words. You have a really poetic way of speaking and expressing, and I'm sure whoever's watching this will really appreciate that too. So yeah, you're actually the second person that I've interviewed. So thank you again. I
Honor,
want to
thank
start
you.
off. Yeah, absolutely. I want to start off kind of talking about this whole like cosmic collective purge that has been happening, the collective energies. What I'm really getting is that we are moving out of this Kali Yuga, this age of the suppressed divine feminine. We're kind of moving into this age of the Aquarius from the age of Pisces, where the mother kind of just washes away all falsity with her waters. And what's left after that are just those foundational truths from which us as, light workers, star seeds, whatever you want to call it, are here to kind of build upon that foundation into a new chapter of humanity. But I really want to get your aspect of it, of kind of the energies right now, what you're seeing for the future and the collective itself.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Ariella. I appreciate you reaching out. I am grateful for being able to share because it's so great to connect because we're a web of different viewpoints. And so I'm all about saying that we are all here as equals and we can all help each other with our blind spots because there's parts that I can't see which you can see and vice versa. And our audiences also. So it's a span, it all spans out. And that is how we can really get to fathom where our greatest aptitudes are as a group, as a consensus, and as a community of how much we can offer each other as we expand and serve each other, maybe in a way which is bringing us really into the current. Because when we're able to trade and exchange our gifts and the things that we actually generally enjoy doing anyway, and that we choose to do anyway, then we are actually in the present and we're sharing our gifts. And so that becomes a higher value trade-off than fretting at a job that maybe we don't so much enjoy for less a bargaining rate than what we will receive if we're trading with someone who has got something that that money can't buy because we're putting our energy in a trade. For instance, if it would be that I was doing a consultation for someone who was going to give me loads of great food, healthy food, that's a really great trade. Because healthy foods can sustain me and astrology can sustain them, and so it's a good bargain rate, and you can't beat a bargain rate like that compared to coins which don't really add up because they just fall through your fingers. So I see that us connecting now as an alternative is really honoring the transits of astrology, because the astrological transits of this year have been showing us how we've, in a sense, outgrown our shoes. Us as souls have been here learning, and we're all at various different stages of development within this field of resonance, which we call Earth, because it's like this earthing of our presence, earthing of our spirits, earthing of our shadows, earthing of our unwitnessed stories, of that which is our healing journey together through our lives, through the different various tapestries of our ins and outs across an expanded amount of time. We do actually cleanse and purge and level up, if you will, a bit like learning an instrument. Have you ever learned an instrument, Ariella?
Yeah, I actually used to play the guitar, not much anymore. I have claws, so that kind of gets in the way, but I should get back into it. Definitely. I did enjoy it.
So, but when you get those days where you feel that you've just progressed and you've learned that song better, or you've just leveled up, or something, even if it's not an instrument, something else that you're good at, that you enjoy, and you get better at it, and it feels fantastic. And I feel like we do that with our relationships as well, and with our connection to ourselves and our perception of reality, and how much more considerate or intuitive that we get, and how we can help guide ourselves in helping other people, which actually in tow helps ourselves, or even taking responsibility for things that we've negated and were negligent. It's a hard word for me to say. With, you know, and we're picking up the slack, if you will, on things that we've gone by the wayside on certain
Yeah.
parts of ourselves. Some of the easiest things for some people, you know, someone might even like not consider how hard something might be for one person, but yet it could be the most intolerably it could be very easy, it could be intolerably hard for one person but very easy for another. You know, we all have our particular phobics, or, you know, fears, or in a sense challenges, and they become, when we do work on them, our silver linings. They become where we put our most elbow grease when we choose to eventually, because we know it so well, we could address it straight away. I mean, sometimes we might pretend that it's not even there, but then when we go into it, we recognize it. And then it does become actually one of our greatest gifts as well, when we can slow down and be with it and giving it the recognition, recognizing it. Often these things haven't been given recognition, and that goes for each one of us. And so this year, to be more direct, has been such a complex year because we've had Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter all within the sign of Capricorn. And this is the first time in 735 years that they've all been there. And Capricorn is the 10th sign. And if you start with a zodiac, you start in the east, which is where the sun rises every day, because that's initiation. If the sun's rising, that's the beginning. And so, but in a clock of the astrological world, your transits will go anti-clockwise. And so if we was to go 735 degrees, which is, you go to the top, and that would be the 10th sign, Capricorn. And so the 10th is like the bit on top of the arc, which is the foundation piece, if you will. Even though all the signs are equal, they all play their role, it is the foundation piece, equal to how the east, which would be Aries, would be the initiation piece. And so you need each part. They're all facets. But when it comes down to the foundational piece of traditions and education and banking and health regimes and all of these types of things, which Capricorn is the boss of, if you will, at the top of the sky, you know, I mean, the pivotal point, I mean, when the sun's at the top of the sky, you certainly notice it. And so we could all have all kinds of planets at the top of the sky in our natal charts. It's always unique. My sun's at the bottom of my sky. I've got nothing at the top of my sky. But every day the sun does go past it. And so anyway, this is the Capricornian space, and this is what's been being worked on, that archetype of what holds us together, what holds the world together. And this has been something which has been, in a sense, in disrepute and needing repair for quite some time, in the sense that, as you say, we've been going through a Kali Yuga, which is an extended amount of time where we are purging our shadows and going through hell backwards. And so it's a bit like a dark night for the soul for humanity for maybe 6,000 years. Maybe you can tell me more. What's the actual figure?
I do believe it's 6,000, but I don't quote me on that. I believe you're accurate though on that.
Yes, it's there or thereabouts.
Yeah.
And so as I mentioned, it's the last time that Saturn, which takes 28 years to go around the sky, whereas the moon takes 28 days. And so Saturn's the farthest thing you can see with your naked eye, before you get a telescope out, and then you'll see Uranus and beyond that. And so the moon is the nearest thing you can see. And so they represent, the moon is like our nearest emotional sanctuary, our chest, our emotional feelings, like our vibration, like how we're nurtured, and what makes us feel safe and at home, and all of our family, all these types of things, right? But Saturn's like the farthest things, the things that maybe weren't present, the things that maybe, you know, you can't lay your eye on, but you can, but it's at a stretch. Like, you know, the school system, the education system, all these types of things, you know, you have to go outside to the town or to whatever to found those foundations. So those things have been in like a bloodletting cult for like this 6,000 years, in a sense, and there's been lots of patriarchal systems which don't honor the inner sanctuary, the moon, in a sense. It's been like the donkey in Shrek. That's in a sense, it's been like it's studied on and trampled on. Like the feminine energy is what some may call it. I feel that term's quite misogynistic in itself. And so I like to call it the subtle energy. I mean, I said to a lady the other day who I didn't know her, what she was talking on astrology, and I said, yes, it's like the feminine energy because it's subtle. And then I was like, but it's absolutely fierce too. I was thinking, you know, it was only a fleeting comment. I bet she was thinking, what a pig I am. And but it's hard, you know, you don't know where it all is. And so, like with people, everyone's got their own viewpoint in often, and we're going to put our foot in it and cause medicine where we go. It's part of the course. So in a sense, we just have to hold our heads high and know that we're speaking from our truth, even though predominantly we that are roused to the point of being awake and to ourselves and to be more clear on vibration and frequency. We are in often finding that shadows will find us. We're finding shadows 360, just like we're like a sundial. We're going to find a shadow all around us in our interactions very much. It can be quite isolating, but we have to tolerate and continually show love in a sense where we might be we might feel that we're being squashed or flattened on some days. Some days we just rise above it because our frequency is just beaming. We're like, whoa, I'm on Broadway. We're just dancing, singing, you know, skate dancing, all kinds of things. It might seem like because we're in our own world, we're in our own, in a sense, bubble. But we're connecting and engaging as often as we can to sow the seeds of love wherever we have an interaction, so that we can actually continually marry in and marinate with our atmosphere and the other people that we're connecting with. And that's what rouses and awakens them and also tests us. And so that's generally the interplay that we're doing. But actually the Capricornian structures of the world since 2008, when Pluto made its way into that, have been under deep deconstruction. Pluto was the first to go in, and Pluto is transit there until 2024. So that's like 22 years or something like that. I didn't do the maths, so don't shoot me if I did do the wrong math there. Again, just summarizing. But the Pluto can do like a sign in 16 years sometimes. It all depends on which one it is. It's kind of a very elliptical kind of orbit that Pluto does. Sometimes it goes deep and down under, and sometimes it goes a little bit up over the top of the Earth plane, which is bizarre. And so, because Hades does come out of hell and roams around on Earth in the mythos as well, which is really cool. I love the mythology. It always backs up with even NASA cosmology and even the most ancient Ptolemaic cosmology, which was more of a holographic plane or a concentric set of circular lands. And we're the utmost inner land, in a sense, Eden, or some may call hell, Hel, singular L. And so it's the land that actually we awaken from and get banished from, because once you awaken from a certain paradigm of perfection, you are aware that you're in a land of shadows, and that you're always, in a sense, then doing the work of nursing it as we as a humanity go on a mass exodus, in a sense, and explore other realms. I feel that humanity is actually the originals and the archetype for the whole cosmos, and all alien, in a sense, or AI or whatever energetic races stem from us as a root rotten bunch that we are.
That's very interesting. I've never heard that one before, but that's definitely interesting perspective. I've always, heard the theories that we have been seeded from all of these other races and are kind of like a genetic super breed. That I do agree that may be the case as well. I do think that the universe itself expresses all possibilities, and that's the beautiful thing about it. So that could be the case as well. But I really do think that humans play such a grand role in the grand scheme of things. We're sort of like at this center stage where everyone just wants a ticket just to see or to come to the show, to say. um Us and ourselves, the way that we have been made, we possess such great power, to the extent that these beings or negative entities, whatever you want to look at it, have tried so hard just to suppress us through any means necessary, because they do realize our full potential when our hearts are fully on and we're fully, operating at maximum capacity. I mean, even just look at the brain. I mean, we only use what, like 2% of our brain. Crazy. Like,
Yeah,
so
it's
anyways, not to go off on a tangent, but I really appreciate that perspective. And the next question I have for you, I really think a lot of people need like more clarity on, within regards to the cosmic alignment that is happening, the conjunction on 12/21. There has been like so much, I don't know what the word would be, gossip, or kind of like theorizing on what's going to happen. I myself, I'm not anticipating anything crazy. I do believe also that any, you know, prediction that is made is only ever good in that exact moment that it was made from, because of the way that the probabilities and everything are constantly shifting. Although I do find interest in that date, I do think that there definitely is something special and kind of just boosting the process even more that we're seeing. But what is your take on that? And please explain from your perspective.
thank you. Yeah, and I align with what you're sharing and what you say here, and that it's a pivotal day, and it's a day, but it's not going to be exponentially crazy. But just before I get
Mhm.
back to it, please draw me back. But I must finish on your remark on and reflection on what I was sharing about the center of us being the center stage, and how important our role is and how empowering we are in comparison to, in a sense, a dying regime. And yes, we are the centaurs. We are at the center. This is our garden. This is our stage. And so, in a sense, it's a bit like that song. It's our birthday party, and we'll cry if we want to, but we'll also sing song, dance, and create miracles, because that's what we're here to do. And we've already, in a sense, we've already maximized our ability. We've already made it beyond the bounds of their limitation. It's just, in a sense, how much, how unscathed can we make it? How soon can we get realize ourselves as a whole collective? And this realizing that we are the offspring, the offshoots of that which was seeded here originally. And as you say, all eyes on us. But at the center is this thing where you have been marinated and rooted, anchored into physicality, so that you can then go up. And that root is necessary. It's not something you want to cut from or sever. That is something which we are grateful for, because it is actually, we have all of these different facets of creation, all of this different potential. And if it wasn't having gone through the germination process and having been seeded in the dark, in the earth, in this space, then we wouldn't have all the vast abilities and potential for us to go through and bloom in a lot of potential we have. And so much choice. We were chosen, we chose the opportunity to be thumbed down into the soil, just like a gardener will push that seed down into the depths of what had already been put through a compost heap procedure, no doubt, where all of the different rots and all of the different layers get pushed down together, a bit like how we find that. Whenever I get to explaining the compost heap, I also think about like how they talk about the fossils that you find on the sides of cliffs, and all the different ages of silt and cement, and, like, in a sense, all the different types of organisms that have lived through eons and ages on this earth, if you will, which I believe is a creature in itself, the earth. And so it's, which is really us, and we're just, like, in a sense, living on it. I often think like you, when walking along the beach, I imagine if it was just to stand up and say, hey, do you mind not walking on the beach? Like that.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, exactly.
But
I do want to.
go on. Yes,
Oh no, sorry. Finish what you were gonna say, and I'll wait.
yeah, it's just that the pinnacle thing about being at the center of time is that we are actually the cleaners of it, the doctors of time, in the sense, the witch doctors of time. And we are actually have forgotten our place, in a sense, as the cleaners of time, because when we awaken to it, we are like healing ourselves, healing the cosmos, healing everybody that we come into contact with within our relationships, because we're getting clear, we're getting transparent, we're walking away from entanglements where it's not valuing or not honoring. And so that is teaching people as well, and we're learning ourselves along the journey through our pain, through our graces, of actually learning that the spectrum of love is all of the emotions. And so it is really walking away from our relationships at the end of the day is what finishes them and gives them the love that they need. And that's really the hardest thing, is it becomes a real solo journey, and we become a little bit more like Doctor Who in a sense, because he always has to depart from his stories, his relationships. If you check out all of the time travel media, they're always solo cats, like James Bond, you know, Bill and Ted. They have to say goodbye so they can continue on their journey. And in a sense, we're timeless beings. If we can actually gather the present, like what we were saying, by honoring our traits and our gifts, which brings us into a golden frequency of joy, a timeless frequency, then this is actually coming together with another transit, which is synonymous with that which is going on in Capricorn, and that is Uranus, the higher vibration of Aquarius, where Saturn and Jupiter are meeting on the 21st of December in Aquarius. Uranus also rules Aquarius, and for the past 2 years, it has already been coming up with new solutions for the problems that which we are overcoming now, because every problem's got to find solution. And this kind of radical, even slightly beyond, ahead of its own time, is like all about being the most soothing and sensual, because Uranus is in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And so it's about producing things which are pioneering, but also practical and grounding, and bring us into the senses, the oohs, the ahs, the e's that I feel in my body. And because we've been, in a sense, out of our body through trauma. And even when we get into our body, we even find that it's uncomfortable, or there's rage, or that it's then sexual, and then we get demonized and chastised for being sexual in society very often, or even told to be more sexual. You know, it goes both ways. And so we're in the opportunity to reclaim all of these things, because the key thing about Capricorn being at the top, being under reconstruction, is that it rules traditions. So in a sense, it rules all of the arcs, being the top keystone. Even the terminology of traditions, we can say, is that we're upgrading and revamping and re-energizing the energy. And yet the old crusty old energy is likely to be looking to grab onto what it's got, even though this energy is like seaming through us. You know, we're all moving and shaking, we've all got our own thing going. Uranus is electrifying, but it's also kind of soothing in Taurus, so it's not too much. The electrifying is kind of welcomed more now, and more and more. Even more means love. So when now we have on the 21st of December, Saturn and Jupiter actually coming to this point in Aquarius, it's a very important time. It's actually just that Jupiter will be moving beyond Saturn, and this happens every 20 years. It's like passing of the torch, if you will. And in the UK, £20 is called a score. So you might borrow £20 and you go, oh, I've got your score, and you give them back the score. I think it originally came from, you know, like Bart Simpson writing on the blackboard, and he'd do the five, like do the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so obviously 4 of those would be a score, and then you'd move on to the next, and you draw a line, and the score is also like what you do with a ruler. So you get your station. I haven't got a ruler. You get your stationary kit, and you go stationary kit, because there's nothing moving here. We're pretty grounded on the earth. That's why they call it a stationary kit, where you get your scissors and your ruler and your compass, or protractor, depends who you are. But yeah, you draw a score. You score a line, or you rule a line, because a rulership and a score, or 20 years, is really a formidable chunk of time. So it's every time that Saturn and Jupiter meet. And so they call it the Great Conjunction, because it's the meeting of Jupiter, which rules spirituality, going above and beyond to learn and discover something, going on a journey. It's not something that's done overnight, but you can certainly go on a trip, which actually is using your mind, body, and spirit, the triplicity. And so that is a journey. And sometimes all kinds of things can send you on a trip. I'm looking at you and I'm on a trip because you're beautiful. Yeah, but it could be that we're looking at a lake, it's gorgeous. Or it could be that we're just so excited to go on the train, not been on the train for so long.
Right. Yeah.
So
Well, thank you. I have a question for you, because I hear a lot of people talking about like an alignment, in the sense where like all of the planets are going to be aligning, which I don't think is going to be happening. So that kind of confused me. But is there a full planetary alignment happening?
I feel like what they're talking about is if you use the cosmology of like the one that NASA uses, you can actually shift it to look at it from various different perspectives.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen the kind of, I haven't got the program, but you can look at it. I look at the stars in the sky, and I look at the stars through my astrological chart. And so for the alignments for those don't necessarily, for me, mean anything, because I don't see it. It's not an omen for me. It's not having any particular electromagnetic gravitas shift for me. They're not making aspect to one another. So I don't want to call it baloney, but I don't want to do that. But it's just a bit like, I don't understand it. Maybe it's not the philosophy which works with astrology.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that for me. And I just want to touch on what you were saying with the whole, you plant a seed in the ground into the soil. I just want to touch on that really quickly, because a lot of us, in the spiritual community, this whole love and light shit that everybody, it's just fully to understand and to fully embrace the light, you have to master the darkness. You're never going to be granted access and into the full power of the light until you are able to master that darkness. So it really just comes from, stepping out of that and, choosing the light after coming and merging from the darkness, and creating your own balance within the two, because there is definitely beauty and power in the dark as well. That's the womb space that we and creation comes from. So I just wanted to touch on that really quickly as well. Within regards to what I was going to ask you about my birthday, my chart. I actually heard you mention in another video, my birthday is actually 11/13. I heard you mention something about that being a powerful day as well. So I didn't know if you wanted to touch on that too. I'm interested personally.
Yeah, of course. Like, let me finish up on explaining the Saturn bit of Jupiter, and then I'll pull us into what you just asked.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. And so we have Jupiter, which rules the spirituality and like the mind, body, and spirit, and going above and beyond. And essentially, really don't have to reach for the top shelf to get the kind of bookshops, or go and get a plane ticket and go in the air. And so Saturn as rules. So it's Jupiter rules Sagittarius, the sign before Capricorn. So you can imagine that's just to the right, or to the, if you will, in the arc of a doorway. If you're using the arc of a doorway analogy, which we used earlier, of the circle, and we said that Capricorn's right at the top, and so it's in a sense the traditions, the top of the sky, and all of these things. And so Jupiter rules this section of the sky. Saturn rules this section of the sky. This section is a bow and arrow going ba-ding to the corner, whereas Saturn's the top. And so also Saturn will rule Aquarius as well, which is in a sense that corner, the other side. And so with Saturn and Jupiter currently being in Capricorn, moving into Aquarius, what we're doing is seeing that Saturn is going to actually spend 3 years in Aquarius. It's already gone into Aquarius. In fact, there's a story to go with it. I'll try and keep it short. It's a bit of a hullabaloo, but we know it so well. Saturn went into Aquarius on the ingress of the sun into Aries, which is the first sign in spring. And so actually Saturn had already gone into Aquarius, which actually brought us a new load of rules and regulations and kind of a squeeze. Saturn squeezes. It's like how you can make something last the test of time. It's a bit like being watched while you do your homework, in a sense. And that's a bit of a pressure, in a sense. But it's not very nice to be watched when you're doing something, but you do get support. You can ask person who's watching your questions. They're obviously clearly good at what they do. You know, it's like, so it's got in a sense a resource of support in Saturn as well. You can become Saturnian and make it your friend. And because we didn't know about Uranus, which rules Aquarius way back, because we didn't have telescopes, when Saturn would be in Aquarius in the olden days, you'd see Saturn as a bit of a radical, in a sense, something that is about the structuring and supporting the community ahead of the banking systems. It's about saying, hey, that bank's awful. Why don't we just get the paper boy to deliver this and that, or get the person who is the paper girl, or the person who walks the dogs, or the person who brings the flowers to help deliver this, because they're responsible members of the community. They're an authority on connections. They know someone who knows someone. Oh, let's ask this particular gentleman or this particular female because they have already been connecting with the musician. They probably know the photographer. You know, and so these kinds of things go along with Saturn in Aquarius. And in a sense, it's also the authority on, it made other people authorities when Saturn went into Aquarius this year, because they were like, hey, why aren't you wearing a mask, for instance, would be on the, or where's your exemption form, these types of things. Different rules were, because it's another 20 years, Saturn hadn't been in Aquarius for 28 years, but Saturn and Jupiter were last met in the year 2000 in Taurus, which was the last time that they met. And actually, this is the first time, for the next 150 years, they're going to be meeting in only air signs. And so for the past 150 years, Saturn and Jupiter always were meeting in earth signs. So that was Taurus, Virgo, and Capricorn, except for in 1980. There's always one kind of blend. They did in 1980 meet in Libra, which is an air sign. It's how they merge. But before that, they hadn't met in an air sign for 800 years. And so they're not going to meet in an earth sign again for another 800 years. And we've just come out of what was manifested from 150 years of Saturn and Jupiter meeting in earth. We had the Industrial Revolution, you know? And so before that, it would have been in fire. It would have been like, hey, I'm Jack the Lad, rodeo, and it was like Henry VIII, and everyone was just like, I'm kind of, you know, big me, Roman empires, all of this type of thing. But then after that, they had the fire going into earth, which brought the steam trains, train tracks, and then like the world of commerce and trading, and then eventually Walmart, you know, and this type of thing. And this is how it's gone to like iPhone, because we're in the 80s, you know, we had the home computer. Which brought in technology. But then in Taurus came around, we're like, shit, how are we going to pay for the home computer? Let's put it on the plastic, because it's back to the earth. The finance, we'll pay for it later. And this is why we've got into the mess that we've got now, because we went from having millionaires to having billionaires, and even some ghastly trillionaires. But those trillionaires are actually more like, they are more like the motherships of what I consider to be not human entities. These corporations aren't human. They are a bit like, you know, in Independence Day, they've got the ships. Basically, they are the Walmarts of this world. They are the Nikes. They are, in a sense, these different groups, these major groups, and there's not many of them really. They just span out again. and fan out through different names and ideologies and archetypes. Anyway, so that's quite cool. We're starting to recognize this now. I mean, that's still kind of new for me to sort of express, and it's kind of it feels very true and grounding. I see you nod as I was sharing this, right? How do you feel about that, recognizing this?
That is a very different perspective that I heard. I really appreciate you sharing that, and just coming to the, fact of going from earth to air is such a major transition in density and form, and it's just a complete transformation within the elements. And I think that's kind of what we're going to be witnessing here, in a sense, from transformation from living in such a dense, lower vibratorial state into more of an airy, light, higher frequency, so to speak. Not that the earth is not high frequency at all. She's very, very high vibrate, even more so right now, the Schumann resonance that is increasing it daily. But yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. I'm really pleased that you inspired me. It really helps me because I'm Libra AF, and so it helps to have someone to bounce off of and to be able to draw information out of me like that. I appreciate it. And so, yeah, really what it comes down to is that, yes, Saturn and Jupiter are meeting. Jupiter is actually going to be moving through Aquarius really so fast. It's going to actually make its ingress to Pisces by May. Super duper fast. And then it's going to go back into Aquarius, whereas Saturn will stay in Aquarius for the next 2.5 years. And so we're going to be seeing loads of new rules and regulations, but because Jupiter's coming with it this time, it's in a sense got a lot more hoo-ha and spirit and a lot more faith and gusto. And the reason why we have had zero gusto in a sense for quite a while is because while that Jupiter, Saturn and Pluto have been in Capricorn, the lineup has been Jupiter, Pluto and Saturn for quite a long time. And Jupiter's been with Pluto 3 times, which is like the pandemic kind of thing. But we've never had a pandemic before. So in a sense, it's actually more like a filthy, well, choose my word wisely. I would just say hoax or devastation. There's a better word which I could use. I had the other day, but yeah. Regardless, it's like the story that's been spun and put into the consciousness, and that happens again and again and again. It often happens with any plague. Sometimes they change the way the language works. They had a vowel shift one time. Sometimes it could just be that you shift an idea and say that dinosaurs existed and that we were evolved from monkeys. All of these different types of things, the different things that they're just thrown into the wishing well of the conscious humanity. One time they just created Hollywood, and these different tricks. And then they will actually have wars, but these are more psyop kind of wars that they have done for many, many eons as well, these different tactics. I say we developed
Who
through
are
it.
they?
Yeah, they
Who
are us.
are they? No, I'm just kidding.
I feel like that in a sense that they are us, but yet there's this us which is actually our genetics, is that there is a AI component to us. We are within something. And so recognizing this is really pioneering, but actually finding that we're the programmers, and yet in a sense we are channeling somewhat of a dance. It's always going to be this light and dark. It's been a bit too awash with the dark, as you so correctly said, and it has been for some time, but now it's going to start to bleed out to better equality, and it's going to take some life, like we are, in a sense we have manifest and chosen to manifest at this point where we're really through our lifetimes laying the banquet for what will become the opportunity to walk into the next stage of what will become maybe a golden age in about 150 years. So we're in a sense being passed the baton, and we are also passing it on, and it's not an ideal situation, but we chose it because it's like the most honorable task, in a sense, the most humane task that could possibly be done. So it's really quite cool. So we must be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So with that happening with Saturn and Jupiter, it's not quite done yet. They haven't finished in Capricorn yet. And you asked about your chart. And so what I will do is I'll explain what's going on. and then I'll look at your chart. So basically on the 13th of November, which is a few weeks, 3 weeks from now, as we record, and this will be just before a new moon in Scorpio. We're currently in a Libra lunar cycle, and the moon is waxing towards a full moon. Libra and Taurus, where the full moon will be, are both ruled by Venus. So it's a very Venus time, which is pretty nice. But also that's to say that we're very feely and very sensitive, and we can see really deeply, because actually the sun's already gone into Scorpio, even though we're within a Venus lunar cycle. So we've got this kind of very broad dynamic to energy at the moment. It's new, but it's going to be this kind of newness that we're experiencing, in a sense, our revelations, like our eye of judgment, our deeper perceptions, which we're coming into now, and evening out some of our connections with ourselves and one another. In a sense, we're doing that balancing act. We're being the temperance. We're feeling into the frequency shift. We're seeing more of our uncomfortable vulnerabilities, and that is very healing and nurturing for us. It becomes our empowerment. Because, yeah, you said love and light, which is really great to sustain. Sometimes it's a challenge to get there. But when we're within that, it's because it's actually sparked up from darkness. Because before there was light, which is an idea, there was just darkness. And the idea of light is that which separates the darkness. The sun, the conception of the sun is something which brings and separates the nights. And so every time that we have an idea, it separates the two different scenes. I mean, even just the letter I is just a beam of light, or as we can call it, an astralis, a straw, a ray, or Madonna, like Madonna says, just a ray of light. And so, yes, that's just like an idea, and they are coming in a flash, and sometimes they stream and we channel and we go into these connections. All of us can do that often when we're most relaxed, or when we're doing something we enjoy, like, you know, knitting or playing the guitar or painting, or what we're doing here. For me, this is what I like to do. And so, yeah, this is really exciting for us, that we're having this metamorphosis, but it's also like a bit of a squeeze right now. And so we're probably like this, they're threatening all the lockdowns again, you know, and there's lots of, in a sense, still a load of bravado. I don't watch the telly, but you hear things, and things seem so silly, you just don't, and it's not really that surprising these days. So just try to focus on the self, even though there's the election going on as well. And so there's this election going on, which happens 10 days before the date which you mentioned on the 13th, which is your birthday, right? Solar return. And so the election's happening just after the day of Mercury finishing a retrograde. Mercury is currently retrograde. And so it's going to go back from Scorpio back into Libra and station on the day of the election, on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. That's when the station of Mercury happens. And then Mercury's going back into Scorpio after that. But it's that actually on the 13th that we have Mars station after its retrograde. And the Jupiter, which is actually, as I said, been in the lineup of behind Pluto, Jupiter, Pluto, and then Saturn. Jupiter catches up with Pluto and then overtakes Pluto, which is actually happening for the 2nd time, because Jupiter retrogressed back over Pluto in August. And that's when they were like, hey, get locked down. We've got some seriously fake death tolls for you. And, you know, and a lot of us obeyed, because, you know, what else are we going to do after especially being programmed through decades to wear obey t-shirts, you know, ridiculous. And so we did, and that's respectable for various different reasons. We don't, and this has been the challenge, it's been a psyop, because we've been separated and divided, even because how can you look down upon or frown upon somebody who's concerned about their children and just obeying or being to go along with the consensus because they're concerned about their children, or because they're concerned about putting food on the table? Is a lot of pressure. In a sense, it's all very well in me being more high and mighty, but I haven't got a family to look after right this instance, you know. And so maybe I wouldn't have the squeeze to be able to say that. Anyway, point being, it's going to be going past again. There's probably going to be all kinds of other things going on. I think there's going to be a bit of a skirmish post-election. Well, was he meant to become the president again? Or why didn't you put him back as the president again? I don't know. Either way, it's not going to be completely clear. But that means we're getting clear. The more that the shit out here that we see, it's a bit like a magnet, because we're retracting it from inside of it. We're like, I'm not having that crap inside of me. So if we're seeing it reflected outside of us in the Maya, and so we can find that it's quite a cathartic process if we can look at it like that. But at the same time, we know that we've been walking through our own hell, or loving the hell out of ourselves inwardly, which is a gargantuan effort sometimes when you wake up, and it's just quite an effort to get up in the morning. Sometimes you've got all of these tiny things, you know. For me as a Capricorn, my skin is such a small thing, you know, and it's like really suffering for my skin. Like I have to put cream on it, such a procedure, and blah, 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 and then it's like heat and vapor and clammy and all these kinds of things. In the summer, it's not so bad. It's just because the seasons have shifted. And it really, really toils because it can beat you down. That's what can be a drag. And all these things have been considered to be necessarily wars against humanity, because they've put us in these farmer situations where we have become reliant so we can get through seasons, and because we've had low vibrational food, because we've had all this perpetual situation, which all basically adds up and drags us down out of beaming into our completeness, you know. But we're not diminished, we are not less than, we are empowered, we are complete, we are whole, and we choose to show up every single day. And even if it's those days where sometimes we do have to nurture ourselves and shy away, you know, this is all for our empowerment. So basically on the 13th, Jupiter goes past Pluto and Mars goes direct, and it's in the dark lunar phase of a Libra lunar cycle as we move into a Scorpio lunar cycle, which is ruled by Mars. And so then we are, in a sense, going through the birth canal, or what some might say is going through the U-bend. And so it depends what how you choose to label it, because it's going to be a bit of a shit show either way. But at the same time, it's really beneficial because some of it's stuff that we've been holding back. So more that we witness of it inwardly or outwardly, the more that we're able to transmute and really go through the eye of the needle. A lot of the things that maybe we haven't witnessed within ourselves or in the world are things that we can't carry with us. They're karmic things for humanity, a bit like all the trafficking, or a bit like how we've externalized our empowerment to certain different services in the world, and how this actually abuse goes in our families. And sometimes it's very deep, even how we abuse ourselves, you know, with bad diets or things like this. Certainly something I struggle with sometimes every day. And so we're all still going through these transmutations. And yet when we get through to the next, when we get past that date, things are going to move more rapidly. That's a bit like the bottleneck. Mars will start moving forward. Mars loves going forward, doesn't like going backwards. It only does that for 6 weeks every 2 years. And so Mars will slowly start to gear up, and it'll be revisiting things that maybe we had changed. And the whole point of Mars going backwards is so that it can change face. In a sense, it is the head, it is the identity, it is the persona, it is the I am. And I feel like I'm different than when I was way back in August. And we've had so much realizations and reckonings, and you know, rethinkings of who we are and how we want to act and who we can be and who we have been has been really witnessed as well as we rethink ourselves. And so we will be carrying ourselves as more warrior spirits rather than and responding to life as a, you know, as a very courageous can-do attitude, rather than a I am angry that I have been held back, knowing that we are actually going to achieve a lot of our goals. It's just a matter of pacing it and doing it. Because now the doors will be opening a lot more for us who've got gift sets in alternative fields, that's within the spiritual craft, holistic fields, people who are doing their creative media work, like with music or with video work. This is all very healing for us. Through our darkness becomes the greatest art. It's like our honey. This is humans' gift to the healing journey, is how we can create with our songs and it's basically making love to ourselves as we do this, because we're being within our own joy, within our own fabric. And it's the same energy as what goes into making love, because it comes from the pineal gland. It's all coming into more clear crystal consciousness. As we develop ourselves and put our energy into stuff that we love, all the doors are opening for us to actually find that we can not have to return back to the old traditions, not have to go back and work that job which made us feel cruddy, and not have to return to the old habitual regimes that didn't serve us, whether they were health patterns or diets, or whether it was just something, that we didn't enjoy, which brought us into a low vibration, which now we can shed and find that there are openings for us to do things that bring us into resonance with who we choose to be. And that is more Aquarian. It's the individual, which still feels isolated for being a bit weird, but also who finds that space within their weirdness where they find then that they're supported by their tribe. So there's always still this, well, I don't know about the rest of the world, but at least I've got my section, in a sense. And we've all got our own section, and we can respect and honor that, because there's so much synchronicity between us. There's so much that we do share. In fact, there's more that we share than what we don't share. And we can recognize that even through the division at this time, even through mask wearers versus people who choose not to wear a mask, or people who are in different race or different even what's the stuff of the money, do they call that,
Sorry,
what's the stuff of the money that the different barriers, the different regime classes,
oh, the exchange rate. Oh, I don't know, sorry, I don't know if I knew what you were
I mean,
talking about.
no, you were on the money. As I meant class, like, so, like, they have like, oh well, we're a higher class and upper class. We're actually seeing that actually that's just going to be dissolved, and a lot of we're going to recognize the similarities between us all so much more. And even that there's been this division even between men and women as well. That has been something which has started to become a problem, which I'm seeing and feeling dissolve a bit more now, I feel. Because I feel that it's actually that men need women and women need their men, and both together. It's not to say that women can't be strong on their own. Definitely they can, and men can also. But I know that as a man, I crave to be around women as well, and not just to be on my own. It's great to be around with blokes as well, but like, it's something that we need to continue to integrate and find more support with, and open up our sexual gifts as, in a sense, a healing modality, and in a connection with basically our art and our tribalism.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with what you just said. And to bring it back to where you were kind of mentioning that we're kind of going through this squeeze right now, this kind of like this birth canal where we'll come out on the other side in a completely new reality. That pressure is essential. The saying, like, pressure makes diamonds. Right now, I believe that we're transitioning from more of like a carbon-based structure, carbon being the 666 molecule, going into more of a crystalline structure, a higher vibratory, just complete transformation. And that pressure is absolutely necessary for us to come out on the other side. So yeah, thank you for that. I definitely agree with everything that you just said. I know we've been going for a while. I know it's late where you are. I will wrap it up with this last question. I do want to touch on the point that there's also a solar eclipse on the coming in, I think on 11/12 or 11/14.
Shall I pull up? The eclipses are going to start coming off after that lunar cycle when Scorpio starts, because it will turn that new moon, which is being born on the 14th in Scorpio, shall wax into a full moon partial lunar eclipse, I believe, in Gemini, and then we'll have a new moon solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And so that's going to be really powerful for us, especially, well, but each of them, every single lunar cycle is very powerful for us at the moment. Can I ask you, please, Ariella, please, can you tell me your date, time, and location of birth?